And not only are there people that believe in R. Kelly and still worship R. Kelly, there are people that talk like this around their children. Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. It's Jonathan and I am back with another video, and today doing a very impromptu review of Grown by Tiffany D. Jackson. So I finished this book a couple of days ago and it's really just been sitting with me. And I hate the word conversation, but the conversation surrounding the book and the topic of R. Kelly. In her author's note, she kind of talks about how not only is this story inspired by the events that happened with the R. Kelly case, but also her own personal experiences. If you don't know what Grown by Tiffany D. Jackson is about, it is about a girl named Enchanted, and Enchanted has always wanted to be a singer, singing professionally. Her parents definitely have different dreams for her, and they want her to go to college, and you know, they have her in like this fictional version of like Jack and Jill. If you don't know what Jack and Jill is, it's a very like black bourgeois social circle, social club that people sort of like, I guess the black elite, they have their children, they put their children in it, and it sort of builds those connections with other good black families within communities. Her family has very different dreams for her. She ends up tricking her mother into taking her to this talent competition. At the talent competition, she meets Corey Fields. And Corey Fields is this super famous R&B singer, and she admires him and loves his music. And he ends up sort of becoming her musical mentor. And things kind of go from there in like a very Aaliyah-esque, reminiscent fashion. It turns into almost like a murder mystery because we encounter like these flashes forward between the present day where Corey Fields is murdered, which is not a spoiler because you find that out at the beginning of the story, but present day when Corey Fields is murdered and sort of finding out what has happened, and then these flashbacks taking us from the beginning straight through. What I think is so great about Grown, and a lot of people's critiques about this, is the fact that it is very similar to the R. Kelly story. And for those of us that are very familiar with all of the details of the R. Kelly story, you kind of know what's going on. But what I think is so important about Grown by Tiffany D. Jackson is this: we all know what happened with R. Kelly. We know that R. Kelly is guilty. However, and this is coming from somebody that teaches high school students, and I also know people like this. There are people that, even though with all of the mountain of evidence that we have against R. Kelly, the fact that he married Aaliyah, the fact that he literally was like holding girls in a home against their will and sort of brainwashing them, the fact that he literally he himself and the people around him were scouting like playgrounds, like high schools and middle schools for his next victims. Even with all of this surmountable evidence against R. Kelly, there are people that still hold very strongly that the world is just out to get another black man. And that R. Kelly didn't do anything wrong, that these girls wanted it, you know, all of these different reasons, like sort of blaming the victims, dismissing all of these claims. And not only are there people that believe in R. Kelly and still worship R. Kelly, there are people that talk like this around their children. This is a YA book. And I have had students, because of course I have very real conversations in my classroom. And pop culture topics come up in class. And I have had students vehemently defend R. Kelly. I have talked to younger people that just continue to sort of like parrot the rhetoric defending R. Kelly. And they hear all of this coming from their parents, their aunts, their uncles, people in their lives. And they, in their minds, have begun to really attach themselves to that sort of rhetoric that dismisses the claims of Black women, that, you know, victim blames, that that just does all of this stuff, even though they're not even in the age group where you just grew up listening to R. Kelly. I personally, I come from a family that did not listen to R. Kelly. You know, of course I heard like the songs, you know, the I Believe I Can Fly. It wasn't my graduation song. It wasn't my elementary school song at all. But I did hear R. Kelly's music, you know, outside of my home. But I wasn't raised in sort of that, like, this is an R. Kelly household, we're playing Step in the Name of Love. At family functions, we play gospel music. So that wasn't like a thing for me. But there are kids that literally just, the adults around them have really turned them into R. Kelly defenders. And so since this is a YA book, since Grown is a YA book, I think that young people need to read this. And because it, you know, piece by piece really deconstructs all of those arguments that people have to defend R. Kelly. We see Enchanted, you know, sort of parroting a lot of these conversations like in her own head, parroting a lot of the rhetoric in her own head, you know, even to the point where she is like, she's sort of showing that process of, you know, brainwashing and that cycle of abuse where she becomes very dependent on him, and he shows her that he cares, and, you know, sort of like and this is where the title Grown really comes in, where he says, you know, there aren't girls like you, there aren't other girls like you your age, you're very grown, you're very mature for your age, you have very mature tastes, sort of like grooming her, like literally grooming her. And so you see that process, and there's no possible way that after reading this book you can say that somebody like an R. Kelly isn't a predator. And I think that that's very, very important, because, you know, kids are very aware of a lot of things that are going on now, but also at the same time, a lot of them are in households where they listen to the adults in their lives and what they're saying, and a lot of their takes on social justice and different issues that are going on in the world today. And they begin to repeat that, along with attaching themselves to a lot of the rhetoric and a lot of the things that people say online, because there is a very large community of R. Kelly defenders online, on Twitter. I think that Grown does a really good job of laying it out, you know, and sort of seeing the way that money can really get people to do some disgusting things. And the money definitely made Enchanted's parents turn a blind eye to a lot of the things that were happening. You see Corey Fields buying them, getting them tickets to concerts, introducing them to celebrities, paying tuition. It's that thing that R. Kelly intentionally targeted girls from less fortunate backgrounds, from poorer communities, and, you know, from the hood, and where people literally would turn an eye if he wrote a check and if they were taken care of. And then you see the people around Enchanted in this story, the kids, the Corey Fields' team, turning a blind eye, knowing exactly what's going on, but just like, you know, looking away. walking out of the room while they know exactly what he is doing. And it has a lot of the elements of R. Kelly's story, the story of, you know, R. Kelly and his victims, but it does it in a way where kids and younger people can read this without necessarily all of like the possibly like triggering, some of the possibly like super intense details. You know, because I mean, the details of the R. Kelly case are deeply disturbing. The things that he did, but it definitely makes it a little bit more gritty and accessible for younger people, where they go into this seeing the murder mystery, and then it takes them on this ride where you see what happens when people fail you. When the people around you, the adults, the people that are supposed to be responsible for you, fail you. And so I think that really, at the end of the day, you know, simply saying that Tiffany D. Jackson is retelling the story of R. Kelly does it a disservice. She really goes beyond just the rumors, the allegations, and the blatant industry cover-up of the actions of R. Kelly. R. Kelly's abuse of minors for like over 20 years. Since like the early 90s, and really just gives voice to a young girl that was completely manipulated by the man that she thought was her mentor and looked up to as a mentor. She touches on the failures and the complacence of the music industry, complacency of those closest to the perpetrators, and really most importantly, the failure of the justice system. Failure of the justice system in society to really protect Black women. Really piling on that failure by then not believing the women that they failed. This is really, you know, of course, it's set up as a murder mystery, but Grown is really, it's full of all of these twists and these turns and moments where you really almost don't know who to trust. You really close this book with the sobering realization that this fictional enchanted tale is the reality of so many Black girls out there. So I think that it is a must read, and I think that everybody needs to check out Grown by Tiffany D. Jackson. Definitely go check it out. And so I hope you enjoyed this review and my little rant. Definitely go check out Grown by Tiffany D. Jackson. I will see you all in the next one, and always remember that you are loved.